Welcome to Nerds Amalgamated, a podcast that covers the latest events in science, pop culture, and gaming.
I'm the professor, aspiring game developer, sci-fi aficionado, and completely and undeniably a geek trying to take over the world. I'll be breaking down the news from tech to gaming.
I am the DJ, a humble nerd, a big weeb,
and a watcher from the halls of the multiverse.
Just kidding. Anyways, I'll be breaking down all things comics to movies to anime.
Join us and stay hydrated as we quench you with witty banter, unintentionally hilarious hot takes, and trivia more fun than a night at the pub, courtesy of Nerds Amalgamated. Welcome back to Nerds Amalgamated. This week we're talking about the greatest space western ever made, how ChatGPT didn't cure cancer, and if anime adaptations are a bad idea. And we're joined again by the other guy.
What
are you saying, DJ?
Hey! I'm still standing on the fact that Star Wars is the greatest space western.
Well, you'd be wrong.
Oh, I know, man. The Star Wars fandom will say questions about this.
They can fight me.
Alright, so if anyone wants to send in instant messages, go to our email at nerds.amalgamated@gmail.com and say what you want. Hey, other guy, you there?
Yeah. Still here. Just wanted you guys to record that real quick.
Fair. Professor?
No, I'm not here. Herd cats, DJ.
Cats?
Yes, an impossible task. You can't keep both of us here at the same time.
Schrodinger's cat. Oh, damn.
No, nothing to do with Schrodinger. Anyway, the greatest space western ever made, Firefly, is being revived as an animated series. We're sort of going the opposite direction to what we've been talking about recently, where we've had a lot of animes becoming live action. Now we've got a live action becoming an animated series. Starring Nathan Fillion, Alan Tudyk, Gina Torres, Jewel State, Marina Baccarin, Sean Maher, and Summer Glau. And Adam Baldwin. Unfortunately, not Ron Glass, who passed away 8 years ago now. I don't know if it'll be the same without him, though.
What type of role did he play in the series? Oh, and
Ron Glass was Shepherd Book, the preacher, who had mysterious background details about being in the Alliance at some point.
Okay.
So I've just got a question, guys. What are your thoughts on the statement that what we know as a Western is the equivalent of what the Japanese know as a samurai flick? Sort of like the similarities between the isolated character coming into a new city or town and taking on the big bad, and it's sort of a one-on-one showdown at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap there.
So would you consider The Mandalorian as the equivalent of a Western?
I'm pretty sure I've heard people say that, so if you want to bring that in as your dog in the fight...
Yeah, I definitely take that on as probably the best Western. I mean, I would say season 1, best Western adaptation in the last 10 years, easily.
Oh, I see. So I sense a bit of saber rattling going on here.
Right, so DJ has picked Star Wars in general. Other guy has gone for Mandalorian, and I am not backing down from Firefly being the greatest.
I will concede to the fact that, I know I'm going to be crucified for this, but I have not watched Firefly as much as everybody has told me to.
Yeah, I've just been rewatching it recently, since I've been planning on it for a while, but then the teasers for the announcement came out, and I decided to bring that forwards and actually do it.
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm inspired to watch it now.
I reckon it still holds up pretty well.
I think so too. I feel like you put the theme and setting outside of the world and anything flies, right?
Yep, which is how we got the title of the animated series, Firefly Still Flying.
You wouldn't know what production, what studios taking on the project?
It's being done by Nathan Fillion's studio production team, Collision 30, and animated by Shadow Machine, who did BoJack Horseman.
Ooh, excellent show. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I never finished BoJack Horseman, but the bit of it I watched was really good.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely Definitely one of the best series Netflix has ever produced.
Yeah, and they look like they're going for a really high fidelity style for this.
Just like they did with Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, but more Western than anime style.
Yeah.
They've only released a couple of slides of the character design so far,
Thoughts on
but
it?
they're quite detailed, and yeah, I'm really excited to see how this ends up. And I will admit to staying up late to watch the announcement and then not having it come out before I was too tired, so I had to go to bed, and then somehow waking up in the middle of the night and remembering and immediately pulling it up.
Did you end up catching it?
No, I missed it, but I
Oh,
woke up like an hour after the announcement concluded and
Did they
immediately started messaging all my friends.
did they ever mention who the actors could be?
Yeah, it's the full original cast.
Oh,
So they've got the original cast, new writers. Joss Whedon isn't involved, which I understand he was involved in some controversy a while back, so probably for the best. They've got an animation studio, and I think the key thing they're looking for is a place to actually air the show when it's ready.
yeah.
Which, to me, it feels a bit weird making such a big announcement and making it seem like you're so sure that it's happening when you haven't actually got anywhere to actually show the thing when you're done. But I'm confident that something will come of this.
what's interesting is this has come out after 24 years. So, do you think the Firefly fan base is big enough to actually get this picked up, or is the nostalgia running? Is the nostalgia running harder than the numbers itself?
Well, I'll just pull up Nathan Fillion's Instagram. Was it Once We Were Spacemen, his podcast?
Yeah, once we.
Yeah, they had the announcement video on there where he said, share this around and tell everyone. So I'll just see how many millions of views it's had. It is currently sitting at 1.2 million likes.
Ah!
So in 6 days, and that's just on the Once We Were Spaceman page.
Pretty good numbers.
Yeah, it feels like enough to sustain an animated revival.
Like I would say this as someone who is an outsider of like the fandom. Like I know that whoever I've known who's seen Firefly are like dead set believers. Like people who love Firefly, I would presume would absolutely adore the fact that it's having some form of a comeback. God knows how many years are since it's been canceled.
Yeah, so the animated series is going to be set in between the show and the movie, which is a bit of a short time period. So I'm interested to see how they handle things, since it's only really a few months between the show and the movie. And without spoiling anything for you, the movie wrapped things up pretty tightly. So it's going to be interesting if they decide to keep the movie canon or if they just create a new alternative timeline for it.
Do you reckon there's much space for creativity in that universe for like I suppose like another crew outside of the Firefly original?
Yeah, I think there is. I think one of the comics was actually about that concept of it was set several years after the movie and had one of the crew's kids taking a ship and going off on adventures.
Yeah, I find that to be a bit of a problem with like pop culture these days. If you look at like a lot of the movies since Indiana Jones, like you don't see too many like action adventure films like that take on the fact that your protagonist is going into the unknown.
Yeah, so I think this is just going to be a continuation of what we would have gotten if Fox hadn't screwed around Firefly to begin with, because the original airing was they changed the time, they aired it out of order. So the first episode was the third episode, and then no one knew what was going on because they hadn't introduced any of the characters yet, and the third one is quite into like knowing who the characters are.
Oh, that's gonna be weird.
Yeah, I imagine it was. But speaking of Joss Whedon projects that have been rebooted recently, the Buffy reboot was cancelled the day before the announcement that Firefly was coming back. No, I've never seen Buffy. I think you know a bit more about this, DJ?
But all I remember is Michelle Gellar playing as a vampire hunter, and that's about it. But yeah, the that show released a whole of a lot of other spin-offs, like Angel, for example.
Yeah, so we could have a Buffy, like a Firefly getting another couple of seasons and maybe a spin off could be what equivalent to what Buffy got back in the day, but with a 20-year time gap between when it actually came out.
Yeah. See, what's interesting is it's one Joss Whedon project got the green light, but not the other Joss Whedon project. So I'm wondering, like, with Joss Whedon's name in it, given what we've seen from what came out from about him in the recent years, do you think that whole blessing is helping or hurting the project's image?
Well, I wasn't going to dig into this, but I read a summary of what went on with Joss Whedon because I don't follow drama really, so I didn't really. But basically, he was accused of being a bully and, yeah, not being very nice to work with.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think not having him attached is probably a good. But
yeah,
the fact that the Buffy show got cancelled and they made I believe they'd made a pilot
yeah.
for Buffy that yeah, I'm just skimming the article again. Yeah, so it looks like they were working on a pilot and it got a lot further than the Firefly reboot has so far. So it's worrying that they cancelled that and that they still have to work with Disney to make Firefly because Disney owns the Buffy and Firefly IPs now.
Oh shit! Get ready to see a Mickey Mouse logo somewhere in the scene.
Yeah, so did you ever watch Buffy, other guy?
I pretty much just know Buffy from the memes. I know Buffy more so from the Scooby Doo live action movie where she plays Daphne
Oh, yes.
with her still current husband, Freddie Pinch Jr., who I absolutely adore.
Yes, and I've forgotten his name. Shaggy in those movies. He's gone on to do a bunch of other stuff recently. And it's so weird because he has obviously aged quite a bit since that. It's been, 25, 30 years since they made those movies. And, but he's still got the same Shaggy voice.
I feel like Shaggy's one of those characters that's kind of in all of us. I feel like we can always channel our inner Shaggy at any given time by smoking a little bit of pot and talking to your dog.
Yeah, the real reason Scooby talks isn't because he's a magic dog, it's because they're all tripping on whatever Shaggy brought into the hippie van.
Honestly, I feel like that's canon at this point.
So all those times that we saw Shaggy versus Saitama was just a fever dream. Damn.
Oh no, that bit was real.
Dang.
I feel like
You
he's
haven't
probably the
even
only
seen
person.
1% of Shaggy's power.
But what's going to be interesting is the fact that if this whole project gets picked up by a major streamer, you watch a Nathan Fillion's production company become a very serious player overnight, because because a lot of companies will start bringing back old projects as well.
So you think if Firefly is successful, we'll see a lot more reboots?
Yeah. Yeah, reboots, maybe revivals. I mean, we're seeing a lot more revivals. I mean, King of the Hill, for example, they had a revival. Scrubs had a revival
Yeah, that was going to
as
be my
well.
point. There's already a lot of early 2000s shows coming back.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the camp that if we keep doing this, it's sort of supporting the idea that there is a death of creativity.
Mm.
Like, why are there no new ideas? Like, I like Zap Braff in the early 2000s, but I do not think that Scrubs would, be good these days, the same way that Friends wouldn't be anything exceptional these days.
Oh, imagine they bring back the Friends. That would be really interesting.
They did. It's called How I Met Your Mother.
What
Well, that
what's
was pretty successful until the ending.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
but the problem is the ending, right? Nobody talks about Game of Thrones anymore because of the ending. It was one of the most influential shows of our time, of our generation, but it is forgotten now because of the ending.
What amazes me about Game of Thrones is that people are so into the spin offs.
Yeah.
Look, I recently have just watched A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and I am gonna give props where props is due. Dialogue was excellent, the big needle drop was excellent, like music was pretty good. Like it stood up. Like it didn't have that same level of pressure that I think D&D had for the final like season of Game of Thrones.
So the stakes are lower.
Way lower. Nobody even expected this show to come.
I suppose that's the same reason why George R. Martin has never finished the series.
It's the same reason why Quentin Tarantino hasn't dropped his 10th movie. I feel like people are always afraid to like consolidate their legacy because for some reason or another, like this creative expression is their second death.
Here's a question. Here's an interesting question for you guys. Since it's we're seeing this new Firefly as an animation. You guys reckon it's the smartest format to bring back? I mean, no one ages, no one has to relocate, and the budget stays manageable. You reckon it's a smart move or a
You gonna finish that sentence?
yeah? I was gonna say it was a smart move. That was my question. Yeah, well, you reckon it was a smart?
I
That was
think
my
it's
I think
smart.
oh
no, no,
sorry.
no. You go ahead, man.
Well, I think it's smart because you're not having to build sets and find shooting locations. And these actors are all, well, most of them are working on other big projects and are in demand. Although a couple of them have basically come out of retirement for this, from what I've read.
Yeah.
I'm on the boat that like if you put anything in like a space opera kind of setting, you have like an infinite amount of freedom once you introduce animation, if that makes sense. Like I think like as someone who has only seen clips on YouTube Shorts of Firefly, I think that there's a great deal of like, expansion that could be taking place once they go into the animation genre. It
Hmm.
could be a complete revitalization of the franchise.
I'm just thinking how is since it's BoJack Horseman as well, doing the animation side of this. I wonder how the characters are gonna, how the comedic takes are gonna be like because transitioning from BoJack Horseman, which is a kind of like a a dramedy in a sense, to Firefly, which is full on action.
Yeah, Firefly is a sort of action comedy. There's a lot of funny moments in it.
Have they said
Like,
who's
would
doing?
you would
Oh,
you
sorry.
agree with me with this statement though, Professor, that there was a lot of real slow like progression type like beats that happens in Firefly?
Yeah, there's also a lot of character. I think that's why people fell in love with it so much, because there was also a lot of interesting character work going on in the background.
I definitely agree with you with the very little that I know about the show.
So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see if the new writers can live up to what we've all established as such a great show.
I know I briefly touched on the whole revival sort of thing, and how we've seen some of it hit and some of it failed. What it is so if this show gets made and it becomes a failure, for example, do you reckon it will damage the fans, the people who remember the show, and how will this affect Nathan Fillion since he's the face of the franchise, basically?
I don't think it would really damage his career much. Most of his work is on other shows, and this is a passion project. I don't know whose idea it was to do it, but it's very clear that they're all in it because they absolutely love Firefly. And I think it would be incredibly disappointing to them if it failed, but I don't think it would damage anybody's career.
Just to add on the professor's point, like I might not know Firefly, but I definitely know a lot of Firefly fans. And I don't think any form of creative endeavor on like the IP of Firefly is going to like damage anything. Even if it's bad, I feel like they would be very grateful to have like I suppose this new creative like ideas coming through the IP.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we should move on to our next topic about how ChatGPT did not cure cancer.
So I can say a few things about this because I've been around the medical background and based on what I've read so far, like I feel like this is more so the case of clickbait titles than anything. Because the essential quality that ChatGPT has, or like large language models, etc., has on like human beings, is that they get to notice like very specific patterns in very minute situations. The articles that I've read have shown that a lot of oncologists have been outdone by artificial intelligence in detecting breast cancer or like certain bright flashes in MRIs or functional I mean like any form of like detection. So I feel like that is where they stand out for noticing patterns, but I don't think that they have the capacity curing cancer.
Put a pin on that, other guy, because this article that professor's gonna tell you, it explains why.
Yeah, so basically, a guy whose dog had cancer, or still has cancer because the treatment has failed to eliminate the cancer. After trying chemotherapy, which helped but wasn't working well enough, decided to use ChatGPT for brainstorming. And ChatGPT suggested immunotherapy and suggested that he contact experts at the University of New South Wales, and then claims to have used ChatGPT and Google's AI AlphaFold, which is not an LLM, it's machine learning. It's a different type of AI to analyze the results from genetically profiling the cancer. Then they produced a personalized mRNA vaccine tailored to the tumors. And yeah, it's massively helped the dog, but not completely cured the cancer. Which that story got warped into ChatGPT cured cancer.
Yeah, I definitely do that.
Yeah. So really ChatGPT was a idea tool, not a it didn't do the hard work of actually analyzing the data and producing the vaccine. That was Alpha, which is not an LLM. So it's a very specific, specialized AI designed just to look at the way proteins fold.
I definitely agree with you in that respect. I'm so sorry. I kind of blanked out there.
Oh, good.
Can you
Happens
please
to the
edit the
best of
sound?
us.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay, man. It's okay. Okay. One thing's interesting is that the owner of this dog had initially had no biological background. So, what does this say about AI tools that data scientists could use to get this far without one?
Well, to me, it's not much better than Googling cures for cancer and then Googling immunotherapy experts near me.
Now,
Because that's basically what ChatGPT did.
I'm
It
on the
still took
professor's
the
side for
experts in
this.
AlphaFold to produce the vaccine. Sorry, other guy, speaking over you again.
No, 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 no. You're the professor. No, but I'm definitely on your side where like a lot of these like information could have just been like a simple.
So this thing apparently cost around 3 grand. This whole process, by the way, and it is a personalized cancer treatment about to becoming affordable. Is this going to be? Is this a one-off miracle, or is this a one-off miracle, or is this a personalized cancer treatment, basically?
Well, that's where I think it's the most exciting thing, that it could be a personal treatment for cancer. But if you read the details, they also used a checkpoint inhibitor alongside the immunotherapy. So they were testing two variables at once, and it's really hard to say whether the immunotherapy actually did do any benefit. So they're still studying that, but the story got out ahead of whether the treatment worked. So yeah, it is exciting that for a few $1,000s you could produce a custom cancer vaccine, but only if it works.
Yeah. Although what's also going to be thing is the hype in the media about this, because OpenAI's president Elon Musk have both shared the stories without noting noting it's where it's unverified, and Are we gonna rely on people like those to when it comes to medical misinformation, or?
Yeah, I think it's a failure of journalism to not dig a bit deeper. Because, of course, the CEOs of OpenAI and XAI and all that are going to brag about this sort of thing, even if they had the smallest.
What's also wild about this, and I'm not sure whether you two might agree with me or disagree with me on this one, is that the guy had to drive 10 hours, sequence DNA himself, ask a couple of professors, and fight red tape just to save his dog. And that we're calling this a breakthrough.
That's because it's still early days for this kind of treatment. And yeah, it looks like it works really well, but they need to do more studies to make it does.
I feel like in like a public health sort of perspective, I would consider the administrative like people to be somewhat doubtful of being able to like bring this out to the public because of the snowstorms that happen whenever you say like, oh, this might be a cure for cancer for dogs.
So what would be the issue? So if we were to try this on humans, what are the issues we have to go through to get this as a actual breakthrough?
Well, they need to prove it's not harmful to humans and that I admit it's unlikely to be harmful, but they
Mm.
need to prove that. And they also need to prove that, oh, great, it's contagious. Now I've gone blank. They need to prove that it's more effective than the checkpoint inhibitor treatment.
Yeah, I'd agree with the professor here because it has to have a step-by-step process to ensure the minimum amount. I mean, like to minimize the amount of like harmful effect to human. So, like, you would have to first work in a petri dish, work your way up to animals, and then eventually people who are receptive of these cancers and normal people. So you have to you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt like the drug that you are giving is going to have an overall positive net as opposed to anything else, or at least better than the current best treatment that you have. So
Mm.
it would take time, and the problem is time.
Yeah, because a lot of people because it's interesting because we live in a world where the dog gets a vaccine in 6 weeks, while humans are still dying, waiting years for trial access.
But that's sort of like the social contract that we've signed, that we don't want to inflict necessary like pain onto others. Like you're
Mm.
much more likely to give a treatment to a dog because, they don't have the same level of like, I don't know, Geneva Convention rulings over our rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a big risk if it went wrong. Can
Mm.
you imagine what would happen if they tested it on a human and it went wrong? It would be a disaster. But you can
Oh
test it on
yeah.
a dog because that's a.
I would go as so far as to say that it would be a capitalistic disaster because it's not just a disaster to people in general, it's a disaster to a company. You have to like prove to the shareholders why your decisions aren't quote unquote unethical, and more importantly, why it didn't cause profit for the company.
Yeah. So there's no ethics review board for, well, there is, but it's a much lower burden to convince an ethics review board to let you treat your own dog than it is to let you test an experimental treatment. Because for better or worse, we don't consider it ethical to test new medicines on humans without first testing them on animals.
Yeah, I can. That's true. Here's another question for you guys to ask you guys. I know we've come to the agreement that ChatGPT didn't cure the dog. Okay, we come to agreement on that. But does this cure our trust in science journalism?
What do you mean by cure?
Like with all the misinformation that we see in science journalistic articles, like how don't trust this vaccine because it's made by this company, don't trust that the whole a lot of medical misinformation that comes out of science journalism.
I feel like there is a huge problem with science journalism in general that's been going on pervasively for the last 40 years or so, where like you've got like some of the biggest science journalists in town, science, nature, etc. And then you've got like, these pop science journals that are coming around saying that they advocate for the ideas that these scientists have instead of like propagating the top ideas. I feel like it's a tough position to be a science journalist because you have this need to get to as many hits as possible while being accurate, which I
Mm,
feel like a lot of journalists these days outside of science don't have this moral conundrum to deal with. So, but I feel like when you look at like science in like journalism over the last few, I suppose, decades, like it's been tough. It's been tough for them to come up with like accurate or at least consistent like statements
mm.
that's not like biased or anything or prejudiced towards one group or another.
Okay, I see that. By the way, I was gonna. By the way, to the both of you guys, I was gonna ask you about the dog. I'm hearing your feedback. Oh, there. I was gonna ask you about a dog. If it was your dog, would you do the same thing? Like, where would you draw the line on cost and effort to this whole thing?
If it was my dog, I'd like to say I would spend unlimited amounts of money on.
Yeah, I'm on Professor's side here.
Even if the effort it will even if the effort was huge.
Well, it's a
That's what
dog.
make
You've got to do it.
Yeah, yeah,
it's
that's
that's
true.
what
That's true.
makes it your dog, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So, what does this mean for cancer research in future now that this has now that this sort of thing has come out? Do you reckon this is gonna progress the cancer research into a few decades, or you reckon it's gonna hinder cancer research?
No, I think it will. It'll if it successfully treated the dog, it will push it forwards a bit.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like as time goes, like you definitely have more and more technology progress this. I suppose like the need for the ideas of how proteins work, etc. Like I feel like there would be a lot of obstacles to come through, but I feel like when you have the capacity to find out how these proteins work against like cancer cells, it would definitely be a benefit.
Okay, makes sense. You good? Yeah, we can move to the next topic, Professor.
Yep, I was just thinking that. So, DJ, can you tell us why anime adaptations are not a good idea?
So, you both know the Code Geass series, right?
Yep.
I'm aware of it. I've never seen it.
Okay. So, Taniguchi, best known for directing the Code Geass Lelouch of the Rebellion, has spoken about the state of the anime industry ahead of his new film Paris ni Saku Etole Etole de Paris de Fleur, which is basically is find the if I could Etole blooming in Paris. That's the translation. Which is released in Japanese theaters on March 13th. The film is a full original story set in early 20th century Paris, following two Japanese girls pursuing their dreams with no manga or light novel source material. Taniguchi said he's very particular about creating and leaving behind anime works that are not adaptations of existing material, viewing it as something important for the industry's survival. He notes that adaptations have become the norm because they're easier to secure a profit on, but warns if only adaptations remain, Japanese animation will be done. And he continues by saying he draws distinction between skill sets required. Those working on adaptations are like arrangers, while those creating original stories are like composers. And in short, Taniguchi's making both a personal statement that his work and a broader industry argument that original anime storytelling need preserved, or the medium risks losing the creative diversity that made it great.
Well, I'm not sure I can argue with that. Let's go on with the next topic.
I okay. I get I get what he's trying to say, that the anime would be done for if only adaptations remain. But do you think it's a real crisis, or is he just being dramatic about
I think that he's probably being a bit overdramatic because there will always be people creating original work, but
it?
he
Hmm.
does have a point that original work is more interesting than adaptations. And you can get into a sort of circular Ouroboros with adaptations feeding on adaptations. Like, just to pull from a Western example I know of, the Snowpiercer movie show was based on the Snowpiercer movie, which was based on the Snowpiercer comics. And they're all quite different from each other, but they are adaptations. And that effort could have gone to creating something new instead of an adaptation. But I think the reason why they go for adaptations is because they know it will sell.
And that's interesting because like you're another example I can think of when it comes to adaptation becoming knowing that they sell. Watchmen, for example, how when that movie first came out, it was oh, it was a real cool story, and then the and it turns out it was adapted from the comic, and it could have been made into original. It could have been made into original series as well. But I always now that you think about it, like doesn't Miyazaki make all aren't most of Miyazaki movies, for example, original works, or are they all adaptations as well? Because I always thought they were all original works.
So did I, but I wouldn't.
Neither would I.
Okay, a second. We look at Howl's Moving Castle, for example. His
That one's a book.
that oh okay.
Yeah, I know that one is a book, although it's quite different to the movie.
And it's what's also interesting is Taniguchi compares adaptation directors and original directors composers. Do you guys buy that distinction, or is a great adaptation just as creative?
I personally think that creativity should be definitely considered a criteria for best adaptation. You need to
Hmm,
add a little bit of your own spice to the mix.
yeah,
And some adaptations elevate the source material.
yeah,
I
yeah.
can't
That's true.
think of any good examples off the top of my head, but there are some adaptations that are significantly better known than the source material because the source material had a good idea but was just a bit shit.
I would agree. I would say that The Boys is a much better adaptation than the actual source material.
But see, here's the thing though. The boys, when you look at the boys, for example, the boys always had. When you look at the comics, the boys get bloodier and bloodier as the arcs go in the comics. When you see the movie series, it's like, oh, it toned it down a lot more than I remembered.
I would argue that The Boys TV show is a lot more nuanced. I read The Boys comic and it was very edgy. Felt like a Reddit mod got like a month off his like desk job and like was able to write a comic. Like it was edgy, it was interesting, it brought some good talking points, but I felt like The Boys TV show definitely conveyed the message in a much more nuanced manner, at least for the first couple of seasons. Then it became edgy for the sake of being edgy. I felt like those prop sets of going into a penis felt like a little bit overdone for me. Like
Oh yeah, that's that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was painful. That whole
look, I
even in
felt like the first couple of seasons it was subtle. Like you could tell like what they were trying to say without overtly saying it. But like in the last couple of seasons, it felt like bad guy is bad, good guy is.
yeah. By the way, Professor, you were looking at an example of a source material that can be shit, but the adaptation's better. I would say MCU would be an example. Not the current MCU, but the MCU prior to it. Like how they did Iron Man, I think 2 or 3 that had Tony Stark drunk, and they how they dressed and stuff. Or Infinity War, for example.
You're gonna have to elaborate on that.
With Infinity War in the comics was in the Infinity War comics. The whole premise was Thanos was trying to impress Lady Death,
Oh, yeah.
and so he creates this Infinity Gauntlet, Mephisto, and says, "Oh, yeah, you gotta have to do crazy shit just to impress this girl." So Thanos decided, "Okay, I'm gonna impress her by clicking my fingers, and half of humanity is gone." While in the movies, it was basically Thanos is an environmental activist, and to make the universe environmentally friendly, I'm gonna click my fingers.
Yeah, and killing to impress death is more interesting than killing for environmental purposes.
I was talking more of the revenue side of things, and how it's more culturally relevant than the comic book. You know what I mean? Like a lot more people watch the movie than go back and read the comics. You know what I mean?
Right, but that happens to a lot of adaptations.
Hmm.
I'm specifically talking about ones where the source material is shit and the adaptation makes it better.
Okay. I was gonna post a video game movie, but the
That's the other way around.
yep, that's the other way around. But okay, here's another what you were saying about adaptations being profitable. Hang on a second. I lost damn it, I lost my train of thought. Damn it. Oh wait, nope, I got it. Okay. So you say you were saying how studios greenlighting adaptations because they're profitable. Isn't Taniguchi but essentially asking the studio to take financial decisions on his behalf?
No, he's just saying they should be more creative. He's saying that if they aren't, the industry will collapse.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Although, oh man, I'm still getting a bit of umbrage for calling the adaptation directors arrangers because it feels like a low key disrespect to some of the greatest animes we've ever seen, like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. It is an adaptation. So is Vinland Saga, for example. Like, and those were the greatest animes we've ever that were ever made.
Well, from the profit argument, that would be Pokemon.
Okay.
Because Pokemon is by far the most profitable anime I know of.
Depending on which region, though.
Worldwide.
Okay. Yeah. On the one hand, I do agree with Taniguchi in terms of the anime industry is just becoming a vending machine, and people are just loving the vending machines. But I don't think it's dying because there'll be a lot of people making anime.
So we'll move along to our shoutouts. On the 17th of March 2026, we pass the 20th anniversary of V for Vendetta.
That was a
V for
great movie. Oh, sorry.
I've never seen it, but it's a 2005 dystopian thriller film directed by James McTeague from a screenplay by the Wachowskis, based on the DC Vertigo comics series V for Vendetta by Alan Moore, David Lloyd, and Tony Weir. The cast included Natalie Portman, Hugo Weaving, Stephen Ree, and John Hurt. In the future, when a totalitarian regime has subjugated the United Kingdom, a Marxist vigilante, V, attempts to ignite a revolution. It was originally intended for release in the UK on the 4th of November 2005, just before the 400th Guy Fawkes night. Guy Fawkes being relevant because that's the marks that V for Vendetta wears, and because Guy Fawkes tried to blow up the British Parliament. The film was a success, but Alan Moore was dissatisfied with film adaptations for his other works and declined to watch the film and asked not to be credited or paid royalties.
He does that for every one of his single projects.
Well, it must be hard to watch someone make an adaptation and not do it right. So the Wachowskis began working on scripts for this film before they made The Matrix. And on the 19th of March, we passed the opening of the Sydney Harbour Bridge in 1932, which is famous because on the day it was to be opened, at the formal opening, the Premier of New South Wales, Jack Lang, was supposed to open the bridge by cutting a ribbon. Just as he was about to do so, a man in military uniform rode up on a horse, slashed the ribbon with his sword, and declared the bridge open in the name of the people of New South Wales. He was promptly arrested. They retied the ribbon and the official ceremony went ahead.
I bet that guy that was holding the scissors must have been went, that should have been my moment, you jackass!
Yeah, probably. So the man who cut the ribbon was identified as Francis de Groot. He was convicted of offensive behaviour and fined £5, but the verdict was reversed on appeal. He then sued for wrongful arrest and was awarded an undisclosed settlement. He was part of a right-wing military group called the New Guard, opposed to the Premier's leftist policies and resentful of the fact that a member of the British royal family had not been asked to open the bridge. Yeah, so it sounds like he was a monarchist. Part of the celebrations for the opening of the bridge included a 515-kilometre relay from Tottenham in rural New South Wales to the bridge, carrying a message from a primary school and run by a relay of school children. And on the 20th of March, we had the 20th anniversary of the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, which probably needs no introduction. The original release in 2006 on Windows and Xbox 360 involved a player questing across the province of Cyrodiil to thwart a fanatical cult known as the Mythic Dawn, planning to open portal gates to a demonic realm known as Oblivion. Bit of a title drop there. So development began in 2002, directly after the release of Morrowind, aiming for tighter pacing and gameplay and greater plot focus than in the past titles. And there's a bunch of information about how they made the graphics look so good, which is funny because they look very dated today, and probably partially led to the re-release using an entirely new graphics system.
Yeah, the re-release came out last.
Yeah, and was ridiculously successful, but nobody talks about it anymore.
Yeah, that was the funny part. Like, oh, we just shadow dropped this entire game for you guys. No marketing or nothing whatsoever. Just enjoy it.
Well, I think part of the problem is that the new engine setup, where they have the game running on the original engine and the graphics done by Unreal Engine,
Yeah.
makes it very difficult to. So, what's our messed up moment, D?
Okay, so how would you like it if they made a movie about Genghis Khan, but it was acted by John Wayne?
Oh dear.
What
They
about you,
made a
other
movie
guy?
like that, no?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Well, they did one with Salman Rushdie as Genghis Khan. I think that was the. I'll find out. Oh, but with this movie, okay, yep. So back in the 1950s, a group of American filmmakers led some of the biggest names in the business in the Nevada desert to shoot what was to be a biopic about the legendary Genghis Khan. Who else would Hollywood grab the role to play as the first Mongolian leader other than John Wayne? Because he was the prototypical badass of the era, producers dressed him up in the semi-ridiculous garb, let him play the role. Unfortunately for John and the rest of the crew, they were shooting downwind and on soil, and the soil has been contaminated from nuclear tests that took place mid-century. Within 25 years of the release, 91 of the 220 cast and crew members have been diagnosed with cancer. This was an insult to injury because the film was a relative flop and still considered one of John Wayne's worst films. And the more I looked at it, it was basically yeah, the film, most of the filming was done in Utah and surrounding areas near nuclear sites. Some victims believed that the habitual tobacco use contributed, and the perception of a link between the film's location and subsequent illness remains, not least because many of those developed cancer at a younger age than average.
Yes, I have heard about this. And it's a bit questionable about whether it was caused by the nuke testing or if it was caused by everyone being ridiculous smokers at the time.
Mind you, over 100 nuclear bombs were detonated in that area since 1951 to 1962.
Yeah, as a side note, I'm disappointed they don't do nuke testing above ground anymore because I kind of want to see one. On the
Why?
other side, it's a good thing. Like, I mean, I fully understand why, and I admit it's a good thing they don't. But don't you just want to see a nuke go off at least once in your life?
Yeah, I would, but I'm just worried about the health effects. Wouldn't you, other guy?
Yeah, I don't know about all that.
It's not that dangerous if you're far enough away.
Yeah, but eventually you'll stop having enough far enough away.
Yeah, that's yeah. But what happened? So some of the cast and crew that died, or just effects were terrible. So Powell developed lymphoma and died in '93. Amanda Darius committed suicide in June 1963 after being diagnosed with cancer. Hayward died of brain cancer in 1975. Wayne developed lung cancer in 1964 and eventually died from stomach cancer. Several of Wayne's and Hayward's relatives visiting the set also had cancer scares. Wayne's son Michael developed skin cancer, and Patrick had a benign tumor removed from his breast. Yeah, there were so many people that died making that movie. And apparently Howard Hughes was also uncredited use of that movie. That says a lot.
Not really, he was involved with a lot of movies.
Oh yeah, but he's a shady guy. He was always that shady guy.
Was he?
Some people say he's shady, but yeah, yeah. And reportedly, Hughes felt guilty about his decisions regarding production, particularly over the decision to film at a hazard site. He bought every print for $12 million and kept it out of circulation for many years until Universal Pictures purchased the film from his estate in 1979. This film was among the films Hughes would endlessly watch during his last years. But yeah, that's crazy. You do it on a nuclear site, and I wonder if the crew actually knew that there was fallout from that thing.
No idea. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
our wacky movie for this week is 1977's Razorhead, David Lynch movie starring Jack Nance, Charlotte Stewart, Alan Joseph, and others. And the plot is that a hapless factory worker on his vacation finds out he's the father of a deformed baby. He moves in with his girlfriend, and the parents are driven to insanity by the child crying endlessly. I've never seen it, but I have seen pictures of the baby, and it is creepy.
Yeah, I would warn the other guy not to see it as well.
Yeah, I don't
Don't.
know if I want to.
No, you don't want to. Oh, I know. I know. I mean, it's okay. I would say the description is basically if E.T. was not a kids movie, but something out of Five Nights at Freddy. Not sure if that would work, but yeah, use your imagination. Take it what you will.
Yeah, I'm not sure that comparison works.
Uh huh.
But David Lynch was inspired by Kafka and Gogol, and said that it came together when he opened the Bible, read one verse, and shut it. He could not remember if the verse was from the Old or New Testament.
There's the baby.
Production took 5 years, and Lynch continuously ran out of money, but was supported by donations from his childhood friend. And the physical effects used to create the deformed child have been kept secret since the release. The projectionist who worked on the film's dailies was blindfolded to avoid revealing the prop's nature, and he has refused to discuss the effect until his death. He's also said that it was born nearby, or maybe it was found.
Gee, that's one secret you would carry to the grave.
Yes, well, that's all we have for you this week. So look after yourself, stay hydrated, and we will see you next time.
You can find our episodes on Spotify and other audio platforms, social media. We also have a big announcement in terms of thanks to our friends at Beyond, we're now partnering with Insert Coin Clothing, which is a video game clothing company. You can find out all the cool stuff there. We recently got our first stop, and it's a Cyberpunk Edge Runners shirt. But yeah, you can find them over there. You can also support us on Ko-fi as well. So stay happy, stay nerdy. See you guys.
See ya.